Greetings and welcome back to my channel. It's really great that you're here. I wanted to go over the upcoming Record Store Day titles that are coming out on Friday. But first I wanted to give you a sneak preview of what I have coming. All kinds of cool stuff. Chad Casson was nice enough to send me 4 of his new prestige titles from Acoustic Sounds. Boss Tenor with Gene Ammons. John Coltrane with Lush Life. Relaxing with the Miles Davis Quintet. And the very first John Coltrane album on Prestige. I will be comparing these to my original pressings, which I'm grateful to have. Other things we have upcoming. A recently reissued Milford Graves record. And Milford Graves is probably a acquired taste for some people. He was for me initially. But he was a real, spirit animal of the drums, basically. Just an amazing conjurer and medicinal herbalist and doctor and teacher and drummer and percussionist. Just a rare being. This is Milford Graves with Arthur Doyle. Hugh Glover on reeds. Recorded in 1976 at WBAI, which is even today the most left-wing radio station in New York City, if you want to get, what I think of as truth. The new Night Dreamer Classics edition. I'll be comparing that to my Blue Note New York original. 2 new contemporary reissues. I don't have the original pressings on these, but these are such great records. And I also have an upcoming interview with the son of Lester Koenig, John Koenig. That's exciting. I'm going to compare this recent OJC, working with the Miles Davis Quintet, to my original pressing. And then I want to get into this new label. It's new to me anyway, JML. They've done some really interesting recordings. Dear Bossa, Antonio Sievert. The latest record from Lage Lund with Matt Brewer and Tyshawn Suri on drums. Lage Lund is a guitar player. Another Antonio Sievert album. I think this one's a little more electronic, perhaps. And then this one-off, which is weird, I think, a Doyle Bramhall record. Doyle Bramhall, great guitarist, blues artist, sort of the oddball on JML. Then I have some other just strange things. The latest record from International Anthem. I don't even know this is a jazz record. I'll be comparing these 2 recordings. The latest classic vinyl series of Tony Williams Spring with my original pressing. I thought I had something else. Oh yeah. This label out of LA called Sam First. They have a very nice venue where they record live musicians. They sent me 4. This one is Josh Nelson, LA Stories, live at Sam First. And the latest record by keyboardist Rachel Eckroth called Humanoid. Now her husband is not on this record. It's Billy Moeller on acoustic bass. I have Billy Moeller's latest as well. But I'm old friends with Tim LaFave, the bass player who left New York and moved to LA and found his fame and fortune. And he works with Rachel. There's another record coming out with Tim and Rachel and another person, I believe. I haven't received that yet. From Sam's First. These are all beautifully recorded records. So we are here to talk about these Record Store Day releases that I have from the hand of Zev Feldman. And I'll be interviewing Zev tomorrow about these titles. Bill Evans, Cal Jader, Wes Montgomery. Let's start out with the Jamal. This is a double LP, and I know nothing about this record. I know nothing about Ahmad Jamal. I mean, I understand he sort of changed the face of jazz in the 50s with Poinciana, I believe, and a huge influence on Miles Davis. But I am honestly just not really taken by Ahmad Jamal. So I suggest you head over to Norman Masloff's YouTube channel, Mazzy's. He does a nice overview of this. He also is doing an overview of these Record Store Day releases. They come out Friday from Zev Feldman. Zev has been doing Resonance Records. Now he has his own jazz detective label. And he is an incredible resource. Indefatigable. indefatigable, I believe. I mean, the guy has an incredible amount of energy to keep doing these and keep finding these. And not every record store day is a knock it out of the park delight. I think this one is actually, in addition to Zev's 4 titles, there's also titles from Oscar Peterson. There's a Chet Baker title, or a Crisscross reissue, which I'm not aware of at all. I don't have that. And a couple other things. But I'm here to talk to you about these records. And let's start with the Cal Tjader record on the Jazz Detective label. Zev has been reissuing or releasing a set of recordings that were originally done at the Penthouse. This is a club, I believe, in Baltimore. I'm sure I have that wrong. Someone will correct me right away. Cal Tjader, Catch the Groove, live at the Penthouse, 1963 to 67. Cal Tjader is an extremely important individual in American music, and his records are, I mean, you can probably get them on Discogs pretty easily, but they're hard to find just out in the wild. He made close to 100 records beginning in the mid-1950s. He originally was a drummer. He played with Dave Brubeck until Dave Brubeck had a car accident. Then he formed his own group. His early records are on Fantasy, Red Vinyl. Those are always really exciting to find. You know, I associate him with West Coast jazz, but he did come to New York and feel the heat, because Afro-Cuban music or Latin music really had its start here in New York with people like Tito Puente and Mario Bauza and Chico O'Farrell and all these great band leaders who had these amazing bands. In fact, there's that Charlie Parker record from the last record store day where he plays with a largely Latin orchestra here in New York, and that is just a killer record and a great example of Afro-Cuban music performed by masters. Armando Pereza is on this record, and he's a brilliant vibraphonist, but he's a lot more than that, because I think in a lot of ways he helped popularize Latin jazz, as we call it, the misnomer, actually Afro-Cuban music. That's where the rhythms are taken from. And he's a beautiful vibraphonist. He's like Milt Jackson in that way that he plays perfect solos. And he seemed to have his finger really on the pulse. He was extremely popular in the 60s. He had records like Soul Burst and Soul Sauce on Verve. Those are his most popular records. After the Verve series in the 70s, he did records for Concord, and then Concord Picante, which is a label that Carl Jefferson, the owner of Concord, founded for him to release his Latin jazz records, and he actually won a Grammy. Let me pull that record. Whenever this came out, he won the Latin Grammy of the Year for this record, La Onda Bien. Like I said, he's made so many records, and they're always really fun to find in the wild. Here's Cal Tjader Primo, arranged and conducted by Charlie Palmieri and Tito Puente. This is one of his early records on Fantasy that I was listening today. Amazing cover. And this is also a Fantasy record. Why it has this bleached out cover, I do not know. Black and white. This also came out in color. And I don't think it was the difference. Maybe this one is in mono. This was cool, but an amazing trendsetter, really. And always surrounded himself with the best musicians. He had great taste. He chose material that was both popular and accessible to the average person. And he also played really hardcore, burning Afro-Cuban. And there is both of that on this triple record disc. Cal Tjader, Catch the Groove, and it lives up to all the great things we've come to expect from Zev Feldman and Resonance Records. My friend, the photos are so great on this. You've got to see these photos. You know, I interviewed the fellow from Newland Records a while ago, and those guys have really raised the game for what we can expect in reissues. The packaging of the Dorothy Ashby box was just unbelievable. That guy has set the pace. But of course, this comes with a really nice booklet with interviews. There are the tape cases. There's Cal Tjader. And liner notes by many people, including Greg Cassius, It was actually Greg Kaz, a New York City DJ who really knows his stuff. He wrote a really beautiful portrait here. There's a lot of wonderful photos. As I said, what we've come to expect from Zev Feldman, who goes all out, interviews with a lot of folks. But the music on this triple LP set, and I believe it's nights in June and May 1965, 1963, up through 1966. And what's interesting, they will do, you know, it's almost like the club owner said, okay, you have to do some really accessible music for the people who have come to have a drink and not necessarily go crazy on Afro-Cuban. So there are covers that take the A Train, and Never Enter My Mind, Sunset Boulevard, Here's That Rainy Day on Green Dolphin Street, Love for Sale, The Shadow of Your Smile, standards from the 60s we expect. But then you get into the stuff that Cal Tjader wrote, and that even band members wrote, like on side A, Insight by Bill Fitch, who's also the conga player on side A. Lonnie Hewitt, who plays piano on a couple tracks, is all the composer. On side B, we have Davito Pantano Lete, Half and Half, which are written by Cal Tjader, a track by Paul Horn. Mara Moore Mambo. But I guess my point being, each side starts out with sort of, I don't want to call it lounge music, but it's laid back with a little bit of a West Coast cool thing happening. But when it kicks in to the improvisations, where you can really hear the drummer Johnny Ray, who I wasn't that familiar with, who plays kind of straight, but he's also a great percussionist because he's playing timbales on some of these things, along with Armando Pereza on conga and bongo, who also played in some of the great Latin bands of the period. He also played, I believe, with Santana for a while. And he's on more than half of the record. And the sidemen kind of switch around. We have Carl Burnett on drums on a few tracks, Monk Montgomery on bass, Wes Montgomery's brother. But there is that thing that happens when Latin percussion, Afro-Cuban masters are in their element and left to do their thing. And man, it is sizzling and burning and popping, but it's always sort of held close to the vest. You know, they're in total control. So they can go from this incredibly heated section and this automatically lay back. And it's still burning, but it's more simmering than burning. And this record is a great expose of that thing and the mastery of Cal Tjader in running these kind of bands. He's a very subtle player. He's all about nuance. In a way, he's more nuanced than Milt Jackson or Gary Burton, who I believe also writes liner notes for this. And he's just, he's kind of ethereal, his own playing. But man, the way he runs these sections and the arrangements are just smoking. So if you want to hear prime Afro-Cuban from the mid-60s, this is a great record. It's interesting because he, as I said, he's a West Coast guy. He's actually born in St. Louis, but he made his name in the West Coast. Concord is a West Coast-based label. But he came to New York and heard the fire of the players here when it was really happening. The mambo craze in the late 1950s. I'm old enough to remember my parents would go to, they were big ballroom dancers, and they were this is when I was a baby, they were way into the whole Latin thing and mambo. And I even found a program. My mother had gone to see Cesar Romero at some, dinner coffee table thing, and he had signed it, and it was a big deal to her. Ricky Ricardo. Latin was like a new element in America in the mid-50s, late 50s, going up through the whole thing with Cuba. And there's so much great musicianship coming out of Cuba because they're all trained in the Russian style. Anyway, I thought this was just fantastic. I think this is the next to the best of all of Zev's releases this time around. And then we have Maximum Swing, the unissued 1965 half-note recordings from Wes Montgomery. And I love the cover photo. It has a photo of the half-note sign and in Hudson Cafe Bar, because that was right over on Hudson Street. I don't know where the exact location is. I think it's the same place where Elvin Jones did Pookie's. So it's right there down on Varick or Hudson, right when you go into the Holland Tunnel. which is recently a very revived neighborhood full of businesses. Disney bought an entire block and are putting up a big skyscraper, more or less. You can only go so high in the village. You can't build above like 12 stories. So that's kind of nice. But I can remember for years when I moved here in 1990, that neighborhood west of Varick, which is essentially 7th Avenue, was empty. All those buildings were empty going down to Canal Street, which is where you get the Holland Tunnel to go to New Jersey. But now that's one of the, there's no space left touched in Manhattan, so heavily developed. Anyway, this is not audiophile quality, unlike the Cal Jader, which is incredibly clean. You can hear every note from everyone. Everything is really well balanced. It almost sounds like a studio recording, but it has the energy of a live recording. This is more of a, the loudest thing in the mix is Wes Montgomery. And these are the tracks you did not hear on the original Wynton Kelly, Wes Montgomery at the half note. And this really is about the mastery of Wes Montgomery. The drums in the background, everything's in the background, but he's having an incredibly good time, as evidenced in the banter between he and the MC or the DJ. This was a live radio broadcast, I believe. So it is just cooking. It's Wes Montgomery, Wynton Kelly, Jimmy Cobb, and there's like a different bass player every night, which is kind of weird. But one night we have Paul Chambers, Ron Carter, then Larry Ridley, Herman Wright, Larry Ridley again. But this is really essential, and I think really important for people to hear the majesty and the beauty of Wes Montgomery's playing. I've interviewed all the guitar greats. I've interviewed Pat Metheny multiple times, and Schofield multiple times, and Bill Frisell, and for all of them, Wes Montgomery was the man. But in today's modern era of all these reissues, Wes Montgomery hasn't quite been reissued. None of his CTI releases have been reissued. Some of those are great. I love those records. Not everyone does, but some of those records made him a star. There's one called Tequila on CTI. That's an amazing record. He was on Verve as well. But you really just get to hear him at full force playing these amazing chordal solos, and his rich tone, his complex conception, his complex chordal solos, the work he did. You hear his original material, such as 4 on 6, as well as traditional songs like Oh You Crazy Moon and Star Eyes. So, and of course this has this is a trifold. You get a lot of amazing photographs. And I gotta be honest, I think Wes Montgomery's been overshadowed in popular modern jazz vinyl reissue vernacular because they haven't really kept up to pace on reissuing his records with the full court press like Tone Poet does. His great Riverside stuff. Maybe there've been one-off reissues here or there, but nothing done to the degree that Zev Feldman does it. Most of these, I believe, are all cut by Bernie Grundman, so to the degree that they can, they sound really good. As I said, this is really about enjoying his playing and really hearing what a freaking monster he was of a guitar player. Liner notes by Ron Carter, Bill Frisell, Herbie Hancock, Mike Stern, which is pretty wild, Marcus Miller, all these contemporary cats. The West Fan Club from Japan. So I think this is really important to help establish and for people to remember what a monster of a guitar player he was and what a happy guy. You can tell he's having a great time. There's one point where they're playing and the MC introduces him and, hey, Donald Byrd just walked in. Oh, wow. And, it's very much a you are there thing. It's a clean recording. The very first tracks, there was a little minor distortion, but that quickly goes away. So I just think this is fantastic. I don't know what it sells for, but if you want to learn about truly one of the greatest guitarists in jazz, this is a great place to start because, man, he's just burning on all fours. I really, really dug this. And then finally, what would Record Store Day and Zev Feldman be without a Bill Evans record? Bill Evans' Tales live in Copenhagen, 1964, featuring Chuck Israels and Larry Bunker in one trio, and then Eddie Gomez and Marty Morell in another. You know, there seems to be a bottomless well of interest and, you know, taste and fascination for everything Bill Evans. I can say that at our store at the Jazz Record Center behind Coltrane and Miles, Bill Evans is the best seller. We've had all the record store day things at one point or another. They're all gone. These are all limited releases. This, for example, is 2667 out of 5,000 copies. The only one they've reissued is some other time, the very first one. And this record is absolutely burning. Excellent sound. The drums are just a tiny bit bright. But what that does is make everything really clear and apparent. And both of these trios are just on fire. There's lots of soloing, there's lots of 4s trading, 8s trading, 16 trading. When you trade back and forth between each instrument, playing more and more longer solos, more bars. And we have the tunes he's known for: Waltz for Debbie, My Foolish Heart, How My Heart Sings, I Didn't Know What Time It Was, as well as a Bill Evans original 5. They do a copy of Around Midnight. And this just knocked me out. I think this is the best of all of the Zev Feldman record store day things, but it's also sort of a matter of taste. The Cal Jader is fantastic. Produced for release by Zev Feldman. These are Elemental releases, Resonance releases, the Wes Montgomery, and Jazz Detective, Zev's own label. But man, this is just, whew, and it's only one disc instead of like 300 discs, which is pretty cool. There's a beautiful photograph. Once again, original source material provided by Ole Matheson, mixing and sound restoration by Mark Dutrepont, LP mastering by Bernie Grundman. You know, it's great that Kevin Gray is great, Bernie Grundman is great. Did these guys ever sleep? I have no idea, but there are other guys doing this. But these are recorded in Copenhagen, August 10th, 1964, August 25th, 1964, November 21st, 1969. And both of these trios are they're just ridiculous. I always thought Larry Bunker was like a studio cat. You know, he plays on a lot of studio records, or like in orchestras or soundtracks or background stuff. But he is absolutely smoking on this record. I had no idea. But Bill Evans is in top form. And this is just, I just thought this was an amazing record right out of the gate. I mean, look at his face. This is not the introspective Bill Evans. This is the kicking ass, fiery, take names Bill Evans. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. I hope you like what I'm trying to do on my channel here. If you do, please hit like and subscribe so I can pay the bills, so I can keep making that money. Because, baby, it ain't cheap here in New York City. Bye.